We are in an early model JK with a 6-liter LS engine. There's a lot going on with the 6-liter LS engine right now. GM introduced the 6-liter a long time ago. They actually introduced it during the Gen 3 engines, the LQ4, the LQ9. Then in about 2007, they introduced the Gen 4 version of it, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Gen 5 version of it. But in about 2007, the LY6 came out, and it was designed to power heavy-duty trucks. So a 2500 series, 3500 series truck. If you didn't get the diesel motor, the odds are you got the L96. There were some variants like the LC8, which is the same engine with non-corrosive hardware, so it could run different fuels, but essentially the L96 carried the torch for more than a decade. The L96 had the same architecture as the other LSs, and it's extremely similar to the LMG and the LY5. The LY5 didn't have variable valve timing, it was the earlier 5.3. The LMG in 2010 got variable valve timing and active fuel management and an iron block, and that's the key, the iron block. The 5.3s and 4.8s and then some of the 6-liters, well, most of the truck 6-liters had iron block. There were some passenger car versions of the 6-liter that didn't have an iron block, like the L76. A lot of those were Holden-based engines in Australia. They put them in the GM trucks at one point, the Vortec Max. They put them in police cars. They put them in the Chevrolet SS. I kind of call them the baby LS3 because they're almost identical to the LS3. They're just a 6-liter. But what we're here to talk about is the 6-liter truck motor, and specifically the L96, because the L96 has been a mainstay not only in engine conversions but in GM's heavy-duty truck lineup for, like I said, over a decade. What GM did is they lowered the compression, put specific combustion chambers on that could run on low-grade fuel. They made the block out of iron. They made the tune very conservative, spark timing, performance enrichment. Now, performance enrichment is more aggressive in a 6-liter when I say it's conservative, because you want to keep the motor fat and protect it. Some of the 6-liters were special purpose, like if they were working on oil fields, they might delete the catalytic converters. So they were a heavy-duty truck motor. They were used in cab over chassis. They were used in Silverados. They were used in fifth-wheel trucks. They're just used in pretty much everything across the SUV lineup, including the vans. And the L96 did prove to be an extremely reliable engine, and that's why it's so popular today for expedition, because while it may not be the most powerful engine, it's powerful enough. While it may not be the lightest engine, it's light enough. It's just a good all-around, low cost, and we're going to talk about the cost here in a second, engine that if you put in your JK, you will probably be very happy with the performance. Being out of a heavy-duty truck, make sure you check your regulations, because there are rules about gross vehicle weight in engine conversions. Now, looking at the 6-liter a little bit more in depth, the architecture is almost identical to the 5.3 LMG. It has variable valve timing, but it does not have active fuel management for obvious reasons. It's a heavy-duty truck motor, probably not going to need that 4-cylinder mode. Having the lower compression means that it can run lower grade fuels. GM's conservative tune backs the horsepower down in the 6-liter, and they're rated about 330 to 350 ish in most vehicles. However, when we apply a light duty 6.2 liter tune to the 6-liter, it not only allows the motor to run cleaner, in my opinion, but it ups the horsepower significantly. So we're pushing close to 400 horsepower, I would say. I was just talking to a customer last night asking me about the torque. Would it match an LT? And the reality is, hey, look at that, a Cobra. And the reality is, no, it won't match the torque of the LT, because the LT has got direct injection and 10-speed transmissions and 11.5 to 1 compression. But I'll tell you what, the torque in the 6-liter is nothing to sneeze at. Even if you gear it appropriately for the highway, then gears quickly would be 410s with 35s, 456 with 37s, and 513s with 40s. So if you go with that gearing, you're going to find the 6-liter launches hard. It's got plenty of low-end torque. It's got plenty of passing power on the highway. It's just a great all-around motor. It's not an engine that does anything the best, but it does everything good enough, and it's at a lower cost. And while we're talking about cost, let's look at that now. 6-liters for the longest time were readily available, not only in wrecking yards, but new. Because GM in 2014, when they switched their truck SUV lineup over to the LT, they didn't really have a replacement for the 6-liter. So they kept making it. Now they fitted it with Gen 5 electronics. I call it a kind of a hybrid electronic engine. They put a throttle body off a Gen 5 onto it and then used a Gen 5 controller. So it's not really a true Gen 5 engine. It's just a Gen 4 engine that got fitted with Gen 5 electronics. So you can still buy a 15, 16, all the way up to 20 L96, change the throttle body out and run it in your JK as an LS. So we used to pick up these 6 liters at a really good price in the wrecking yard, and not only that, they were available new from GM for between $5,000 and $6,000, and that was a production engine. If you ever buy an engine from GM, try to get a production engine. Production engines pretty much come with everything on it. You got the intake, the coils, the spark plugs, the spark plug wires. They're fully dressed, as they used to call it. A long block is just going to be the block, the heads, the lower end, and all that stuff. You can buy a long block engine and then build it out, but it's going to cost you a lot more money in the end. And production engines have a lot of advantages. They're tested by GM, and when GM puts an engine together for production to be put into a vehicle, I think they put a little bit more care into the build and quality control, because they don't want to have to warranty that engine down the road. GM performance engines that you get from Chevrolet Performance are excellent engines, but they can be different than production engines. Production engines, again, are designed to go into production vehicles. Some of the GM performance engines were very similar, like the LC9 5.3 Ecotec, the LS3, and I'll talk about the LS3 here in a second. But they were essentially made on the same assembly line as the production engines. But as those engines got faded out of production in vehicles, GM started to put those engines on sidelines or secondary lines, and we've noticed changes. Now, custom engines like cammed or engines with intakes made for carburetors, those were on production engines, and they're built entirely different, and they're built relatively different than the OE production engines. So keep that in mind. The LS3 went through a pretty big change recently. For the longest time, it was the same engine that they used in the Camaro and the Corvette, the 430 horse, and they were beautiful engines. Now the newer ones, because basically they're just GM performance engines, they're coming with less components and they increase the cost. They don't come with a flex plate anymore. They don't come with exhaust manifolds. And we've just noticed that in general, it's not as complete a package, and they've raised the price several $100s. But that's the price you pay for production efficiencies. We just don't have it anymore. So the LS3 is still available, and I have to chuckle when I say that because my GM supplier has 220 on back order. With everything going on with COVID and strikes and all that, and labor shortages, I heard that the LS3 crankshaft production line can't keep up, so there's a shortage of LS3s right now, but they'll be coming back. The 6-liter L96, on the other hand, won't. And by the way, I do believe this is a new engine, new production L96 I could find when I found out they were going out of production. So I think this is one, and it's just a wonderful engine. They run quiet, they run smooth, they have a lot of torque, and when you combine it with a 6L80, even though we had this combination 10 years ago, I still have a lot of fun driving this combination, even in a heavy Jeep. So GM abruptly ended production on the 6-liter L96, and I think that came to a lot of people's surprise. But the reality was they have this new 6.6-liter LT truck motor, which we'll talk about in a second. Because the L96 was in such high demand, when the supply was shut off, just like anything else, the price went up. And to find a new production 6-liter now is tough. And if you do find one, and there's some out there, you're going to pay a high price. That bled over into the used market and wrecking yards, and immediately the price of the L96 went up. I'm going to say anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 in wrecking yards, because supply and demand. Now they're more in demand because the supply has been shut off new. And you're going to find this not only with the L96, but with pretty much all the production engines. I was buying the L94 6.2-liter all-aluminum engines for a really good price for a really long time. But when they went out of production, the price in the wrecking yards just went way up. So now on the California builds, we buy a long block from GM and assemble it. And it's not cheap, but it's what we have to do. I am getting a lot of requests on the 6-liter, what's going on with it. And I said about a year ago that we were going to do a 6.6-liter conversion, because I still think it's going to be a monster engine. If you take that 6.6-liter with an iron block with the LT technology, it's just going to have to be a torque monster. And can't imagine it not being. Now, I haven't driven one yet, but with an 8L90, which is a very strong transmission, good for almost 800 foot-pounds of torque, it's going to be a bulletproof combination. It's going to have a lot of torque, and I have to believe the GM set it up for regular gas. The LTs do have higher compression, so you would think gas is more critical. However, they have technologies to help with that. The design of the combustion chamber, of course, and then we have continuous variable valve timing, which the LSs did not have. They had just discrete variable valve timing, so that helps us control cylinder pressure a lot better. We can lower that cylinder pressure to reduce knock. That combined with the new controllers that have ultra-fast knock sensors, and I think you're going to be able to run any gas you want in a 6.6 liter and have just tremendous torque, diesel-like torque on the bottom. But we're going to find out. So about a year ago, when I questioned my GM guys about it, they said just hold off. GM was still, it was a brand new engine. They were going through some teething issues, and we did. And just recently I talked to my GM guys again, and they said, yep, they pretty much got most of the bugs out, and they're just waiting for GM to offer something that we can buy over the counter. There's some rumors they might be coming out with something at SEMA time, which isn't too far off. So we're going to kind of wait for that. We can, of course, go get used ones and all that, but I think this 6 liter has been holding the torch for so long that it's not a big deal to wait a little bit longer and see when the 6.6 liter comes out. Now, we're in a transitional time period with all this because the LSs now are getting long in the tooth. Now they've been out of production, we're seeing engine after engine drop off the production inventory. The LS3, then of course the GM performance engines, I think are all that's left in the LS lineup. And they're still great engines, but I think what's happening is the LTs are starting to erode into the sales, because when you combine LT1 fully dressed in a production engine for almost the same price as an LS3, and then you can buy a 8L90 or a 10L80 for almost the same price as a 6L80, then it just starts becoming a moot point. So I think we're in that period where we're going to see these LSs phased out and the LTs phased in, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love the LT motors. I think they're awesome. But getting back in a good old 6 liter like this not only brings back memories, but it just reminds me how well the LS fits with the JK. Now, in my JL, I had to go with an LT to keep it legal, and that's another thing, guys. Choose an engine that keeps you legal, because every year I'm getting more and more calls from the administrator of emissions labs and Department of Air Quality. I'm dealing with Arizona, Wisconsin, Colorado, California. You guys know we have the 50-state executive order, and yes, we are going to pursue we are pursuing the executive order for the LT. But I just talked to an emissions lab in Oregon, and Oregon told me, or at least this inspector told me, that they're going to be going to an executive order requirement for the Portland area. And of course we know Denver has already done that also. Well, the majority of the country does not have that requirement, and they may never have a requirement. Rural areas that have less than 50,000 people may never go to an emissions program. In fact, here in Clark County in Nevada, we've got a couple of cities that don't require smog because they're just not big enough. Where I have a home in Utah, there is no smog inspection at all. You walk into the DMV and pay your money and you get your plates, and that's pretty much true in a lot of the country. So I hope this video explains a little bit where we're going to be going with the heavy-duty truck motor. I'm a little bit disappointed that we have to start phasing out the 6 liter. Now when I say phasing out, don't get me wrong, we're going to continue to do these builds, but the cost is going to creep up, and it's going to get closer to the cost of the LT, and it's just the reality of it. The cost of the engine and the components are going up because the LSs are obsolete, while the LTs are being cranked out like candy and the cost is coming down. So it's supply economics. The days of buying a low mileage L96 6 liter for $200 to $2,500 I think are coming to an end. And if you saw what that combination gave you, near 400 horsepower, near 400 foot-pounds of torque, the use of regular gas, an engine that was virtually bulletproof, you can run it hot, you can run it cold. The value of that swap, in my opinion, was, and probably still is, the best in the engine conversion world, and that includes the Hemis. If you look at a 6 liter, it's going to perform with or outperform a 5.7 VVT Hemi. And at the prices we were buying the things, especially when you consider the 6-speed transmission, and I guess I got to throw that in there too, the 6L80 is also becoming obsolete in new production. They did run it in the 5.3 trucks and some vans, but they're starting to phase that out for the 8 and the 10 speed, so the prices in those are going up and up and up. and we're seeing that the core price on the 6L80 is really what's hurting us. The core price on the 6L80, I think, is up to $1,500 now. So that basically means a transmission, even a blown up one in a wrecking yard, is worth $1,500. And we used to buy these transmissions for $1,500 with low miles on them. So we're going to take this 6-liter up to the mountain and give it a run. We'll be back. We got a lot of stuff coming up. I think I got an LS3, a couple of LT1s, another 5.3 with a 10-speed, which is a great combination that we don't do enough of, I think. And we'll be back.